A blazing scene opens inside a dimensional rift, where three legendary warriors of humanity have just worked together to defeat the demon god king. Eric and Goran are ready to retreat, but Luck is still focused on analyzing the enemy's remaining magic, almost as if the collapsing battlefield is less important than a rare research sample in front of him. Goran teases Luck for spending every day buried in research, which may explain why he still has no girlfriend. Luck does not even bother arguing. To him, the demon god king's magical structure is clearly far more fascinating than romance. While others see danger on a battlefield, Luck sees a free laboratory. When the topic turns to family, Eric and Goran regret that they have been fighting for so long that they missed the birth of their daughters. They worry that their children may not recognize them when they return. Goran reassures them that family bonds do not disappear just because of a few years apart, and that casual line unintentionally gives Luck the excuse to make a shocking decision soon after. Suddenly, countless demon gods pour out of the void. Eric and Goran have not even drawn their weapons before Luck steps forward, creates a glowing magic circle, and raises a barrier to block the two of them. With his back turned to his comrades, he delivers the classic line, "Leave this place to me, you two go on ahead." In most stories, that line is almost a death sentence, but in Luck's case, it becomes the beginning of 10 years of unpaid overtime. Eric and Goran immediately object, but Luck reminds them that their wives and children are waiting outside. To him, the two of them are also his family. That logic leaves his comrades moved and unable to argue. The barrier is already up, the way back is sealed, and they can only retreat while trusting him. Alone, Luck faces the demon god army. Every enemy that charges at him is destroyed, but his body gradually approaches its limit. Just then, a female demon god general appears. With horns, a tail, and a purple aura, she immediately uses Drain to steal his life force and magic power. The demon god general believes victory is already hers. However, she does not realize that Luck's passion for magical research is even stronger than his survival instinct. He does not rush to break the spell. Instead, he deliberately lets himself get hit, studies the structure of the magic, and searches for a way to reverse the flow of energy. As a result, the skill that was meant to drain him becomes a source of recovery instead. She thinks she is absorbing Luck's power, but in reality, she is giving him fuel. He heals his wounds while calmly copying the skill. Once he understands the principle, Luck reverses Drain, absorbs all of the demon god general's energy, and destroys her in front of her own shocked eyes. Thanks to this new skill, Luck declares that he can continue fighting for as many years as necessary, and time truly begins to pass. Weeks become months. He destroys wave after wave of demon gods, losing all sense of day and night. Even though Drain can restore his life force and magic power, Luck still needs sleep. Whenever exhaustion takes over, his reflexes slow down. To solve this, he casts Puppet Dance on his own body, programming it with preset movements so he can still attack, defend, and dodge even when his consciousness is asleep. And so, in the middle of the battlefield, there appears a man who can sleep while continuing to kill demon gods. His body keeps fighting while his mind briefly rests. This method keeps Luck alive, but his emotions gradually become numb. Every movement turns into a mechanical reflex. He admits that the only thing separating him from a machine is that he can still feel thirsty. After an uncountable amount of time, Luck stands among mountains of demon god corpses, like someone who has completed the most horrifying harvest in history. Just when Luck thinks he has finally cleared the battlefield, a massive black energy erupts from the pile of corpses. The entire rift begins to shake. The demon god king officially revives several years earlier than expected, probably because too many demon gods were destroyed in one place, causing their energy to gather faster than predicted. In other words, Luck has worked so efficiently that he accidentally brings the final boss back ahead of schedule. The demon god king appears with the demon sword and immediately lands a deep slash on Luck. But after 10 years of continuous battle, Luck only steps back and calmly forms a magic circle. He casts Hellfire, drowning the enemy in flames, while also activating Drain, the very skill he learned from the demon god king's own subordinate. As a result, the demon god king revives only to be burned and drained at the same time, forced to suffer a brutal combination created from his own side's magic. In the end, the demon god king turns to ash. Luck also loses consciousness after using too much power. When he wakes up, he finds that his body has fully recovered thanks to the life force he absorbed. His clothes, however, are nearly gone, with only a few torn pieces barely covering him. Luck steps out of the rift and sees a peaceful green field. After so many years surrounded only by darkness and monster corpses, such ordinary scenery feels strangely unfamiliar. Unfortunately, Luck's appearance does not resemble a great hero who has just saved the world. His hair is messy, his clothes are torn, his adventurer card has burned away, and he has no money, luggage, or identification. When he reaches the royal capital's gate, the guards immediately stop him, mistaking him for a suspicious vagrant. Luckily, they still give him a cloak and a small bag so he can cover himself. Once he puts the cloak on, he looks less like a returning savior and more like a man who has just survived 10 years in the wilderness. The first thing Luck does is visit Goran's mansion. However, the guards refuse to let him in because he has no appointment. Luck tries to explain that he is an old friend of the owner, but that only makes them more suspicious. Meeting the Grand Guild Master of the Adventurer Guild requires registration, verification, and a proper schedule, and so the great hero who has just returned is stopped right in front of his best friend's home. With no other choice, Luck heads to the Adventurer Guild to remake his card. On the way, he suddenly sees a giant stone statue in the middle of the square. It depicts a young, handsome warrior with determined eyes, a noble posture, and an almost radiant, heroic presence. Luck stares at it for a while, unable to recognize who it is supposed to be. He asks an old man nearby and is shocked to learn that the statue is of him, the great hero Luck Franzen, who sacrificed his life inside the rift to save humanity. Only then does Luck realize that he has not been fighting for a few months or even a few years. He has lost a full decade. The entire world believes he is dead, while he is standing beside his own statue in a borrowed cloak. The most ironic part is that the statue is far too handsome. Its face is perfect, its hair flows dramatically, and its pose looks almost legendary. Meanwhile, the real Luck has messy hair, borrowed clothes, and the exhausted expression of someone who has not slept properly in 10 years. The difference between the legend and the real person is almost painful. Luck then continues to the Adventurer Guild headquarters and finally reunites with Goran. His old friend is now much older, with deeper lines on his face and a weathered beard. At first, Goran cannot believe what he is seeing, but once he hears Luck's familiar voice, he immediately pulls him into a hug and cries uncontrollably. For 10 years, Goran has carried the guilt of leaving Luck behind. Seeing the man everyone believed to be dead standing in front of him is more than he can handle. However, Luck quickly grabs the pastries on the table and starts eating them with desperate speed, turning the emotional reunion into an emergency meal scene within seconds. Luck explains that he has not eaten anything for the past 10 years. He survived only by absorbing energy from demon gods. Hearing this, Goran immediately takes the plate away and warns him that eating solid food after starving for so long could be dangerous. Even if Luck defeated the demon god king, he could still collapse from eating the wrong thing too quickly. So Goran orders someone to prepare thin porridge and warm water. The person who brings the porridge in is Eric, now dressed in royal clothing. The moment Eric sees Luck, he also breaks down in tears. But soon after, he notices something strange. Luck has not aged at all. In fact, he looks younger than before. Luck explains that this is because he absorbed an enormous amount of life force from the demon god king, which shocks Eric and Goran even more when they realize that he truly destroyed him. At present, the kingdom is still expanding its army in preparation for the demon god king's return. Yet the final enemy has already been defeated by Luck. He was simply too busy trying to find his way home to report it earlier. Eric confirms that he has become king. Goran is now the Grand Guild Master of the Adventurer Guild. As for Luck, he has been granted a long list of titles, including Great Sage, Savior, Great Archmage, and Grand Duke Luck Franzen. It sounds less like a normal title and more like a grand ceremonial introduction. Luck also asks why the statue outside is so unrealistically handsome. Eric and Goran admit that the sculptor had never met him in person, so the statue was made based only on their descriptions. Since both of them missed their old friend so much, they unconsciously exaggerated the details. That is how Luck ended up with a statue that looks far more polished than the real man. After discussing the situation, the three of them agree to let the world continue believing that Luck is dead. If people learn that he is alive, commoners, nobles, and foreign nations will all come after him. Luck only wants to return to being a free adventurer, so he changes his name to Luck Franzen and receives a special adventurer card. His true class, Great Archmage S rank, is hidden. On the surface, the card only shows Warrior F rank. It is a perfect disguise for someone who wants to move freely without attracting attention. Goran asks whether starting again from the lowest rank will bore him. Luck simply smiles and says that rank does not matter. As long as there are strong opponents to fight, that is enough. It is exactly the answer one would expect from someone who cares more about real combat than public titles. After that, the guard who stopped Luck outside the mansion bows and apologizes. Luck does not blame him because he understands that the guard was only doing his job. He then goes to the reception counter, meets Aron, and accepts a goblin extermination quest. When Aron sees Warrior F rank written on his card, she becomes worried. A newly registered rookie trying to hunt goblins alone is risky enough, and from her perspective, Luck looks exactly like someone who is underestimating the danger. At that moment, two young adventurers named Ario and Ginny appear. They are looking for someone to take the vanguard position, so they invite Luck to join their party. He agrees immediately, without asking for an interview or test, and the group soon heads toward the area where the goblins were seen. At the location with tracks, Ginny uses her tracking skill and judges that there are around 10 goblins. Luck silently acknowledges that her observation ability is fairly good, but with the experience of someone who once fought entire armies of demon gods, he quickly realizes that the real number is much higher. Some footprints have been deliberately erased or overlapped to mislead pursuers, something ordinary goblins should not be smart enough to do. Locke concludes that there must be a leader, or perhaps another force controlling them from behind. However, he does not say anything right away. He wants Ario and Ginny to experience what happens when their judgment is wrong and to learn how to respond when a plan fails. Of course, he also silently promises that he will step in if the situation becomes too dangerous and he will not let them die. The group enters an old mine. Locke takes the front, Ario uses fireball, and Ginny supports them with arrows. At first, the two cooperate quite well and defeat more than 30 goblins. But the monsters keep pouring out, and Ario quickly runs out of magic power while Ginny is left with only 3 arrows. Realizing that the situation has gone far beyond expectations, Ario immediately orders a retreat. That decision makes Locke quietly respect him more. A good leader is not someone who always tries to win at any cost, but someone who knows when to stop so everyone can return alive. For Ario and Ginny, the battle has already reached its limit. For Locke, however, it is still barely a warm-up. Just as the group is about to turn back, the ground begins to shake. A giant goblin lord carrying a spiked club appears and blocks the path. Locke observes how the goblins stole livestock, erased their tracks, and set up an ambush. He realizes that this monster does not seem intelligent enough to plan all of that, which only makes it clearer that something else is pulling the strings. Locke reaches toward his sword, ready to save Ario and Ginny, but at that exact moment, a figure dives down from above and strikes the Goblin Lord directly on the head. The newcomer then shouts that small fry should not get in the way. Her sudden arrival instantly changes the situation. The girl who just appeared immediately charges at the Goblin Lord, swinging her sword with absolute confidence. However, the moment her attack touches the monster's body, it bounces back as if she has struck a stone wall. The recoil numbs her arm, while the Goblin Lord is barely affected. From a distance, Ario sees how dangerous the situation has become and suggests that everyone retreat. Locke agrees and tells the siblings to be careful of goblins that may ambush them on the way out. But when the female warrior notices that Locke is still standing there instead of running, she becomes furious. She calls him small fry and tells him not to get in her way. It is a bold insult, but one she will soon regret. She attacks again, but the Goblin Lord swings its club with overwhelming force and shatters her sword. The monster raises its weapon to finish her off. Just when the female warrior is about to be crushed, Locke steps forward and blocks the heavy blow with one hand using his sword while it is still inside the sheath. Before she can understand what has happened, Locke draws his sword and slashes at incredible speed. The Goblin Lord's body is instantly cut into several pieces and collapses to the ground. Everything happens so quickly that the monster does not even have time to understand how it was defeated. After regaining her composure, the girl bows and thanks him. She introduces herself as Shia, daughter of Danton, the chief of the Eastern Beastkin clan. Shia is a B-rank warrior and also a vampire hunter. However, when Locke shows his adventurer card and calmly says that he is only an F-rank warrior, she immediately becomes both confused and deeply embarrassed. A B-rank warrior has just told an F-rank expert to run away. Locke does not tease her about it. Instead, he asks about the thing hiding deeper inside the cave, because he can sense an aura far more dangerous than the Goblin Lord. Shia admits that the enemy inside is a vampire lord. This confirms Locke's suspicion that some force is controlling the goblins from behind. The vampire lord not only has extremely powerful life force, but can also turn into mist or split into a swarm of bats to avoid attacks. Locke advises Shia to leave, but she firmly refuses. Shia explains that her clan has hunted vampires for generations. Not long ago, they cornered this very vampire lord, but her father, Chief Danton, was seriously wounded. The vampire lord used that chance to escape. To Shia, allowing that prey to escape is a disgrace to her entire clan. That is why she has spent months tracking him alone, determined to restore her clan's honor with her own hands. Seeing that Shia's sword is broken, Locke calmly hands her his own weapon and spreads his hands, showing that he can fight barehanded. Shia misunderstands his intention and believes that he is lending her the sword so she can personally defeat the vampire lord and restore her clan's pride. She looks at Locke with deep gratitude as if he has understood her wish completely. Meanwhile, Locke is simply thinking that someone without a sword should borrow one. It is a small misunderstanding, but a surprisingly charming one. After clearing out the remaining goblins, Shia becomes even more impressed by Locke's barehanded combat ability. Locke explains that his original class was Mage, and that he used to support Eric and Goran from the rear. However, being trapped alone inside the rift for 10 years forced Locke to learn every possible fighting method. From a pure mage, he gradually became an all-purpose fighter who could cast spells, use a sword, and fight barehanded. The two move deeper into the cave and enter a massive chamber filled with skulls and bones from countless victims. From above, the vampire lord finally reveals himself, with large bat wings and a confident presence. He looks exactly like a boss waiting for challengers to enter his chamber. The moment Shia sees him, she loses her calm. Holding Locke's sword, she charges forward and declares that she will defeat him herself. But the vampire lord only laughs. He mocks her by saying that even her father barely managed to leave a tiny scratch on him, and that she has no right to threaten him. Locke quickly sees through the entire plan. The goblins stealing livestock and leaving traces behind were all part of a trap created by the vampire lord. He lured adventurers into the cave, waited until the goblins exhausted them, and then appeared to turn them into food. The Vampire Lord immediately creates a magic circle and casts charm on Locke. He plans to turn Locke into a puppet, then force Shia to choose between killing herself or being killed by the new ally she has just met. It is a cruel plan designed not only to kill her, but also to humiliate the daughter of the man who once hunted him. Unfortunately for him, he has chosen the wrong opponent. Charm has absolutely no effect on Locke. The mental magic is completely erased the moment it touches his consciousness. Before the Vampire Lord can understand why his spell failed, Locke rushes forward and punches him straight in the face, knocking out several teeth. Locke calmly explains that his resistance to mental effects is extremely high. Then he mocks the Vampire Lord, saying that a true Lord of Vampires should not have magic this weak, and that the enemy before him may only be a low-class vampire pretending to be important. Those words strike the Vampire Lord's pride directly. He goes mad with rage and attacks, but every strike is easily dodged by Locke. After observing him for a short while, Locke activates Drain. Energy surrounds the enemy's body and begins forcibly pulling out his life force. The Vampire Lord panics and struggles to escape. Meanwhile, Locke casually introduces himself as an F-rank adventurer, making the situation even more humiliating for the enemy. A monster who claimed to stand above others is now being drained by someone officially registered as a beginner. In desperation, the Vampire Lord disperses his magic into a massive swarm of black bats and sends them rushing toward Locke, but Shia immediately charges in, using the sword Locke lent her to cut down the entire swarm. Locke drains the enemy's life force while Shia blocks every possible counterattack. The Vampire Lord's body gradually turns to ash. He realizes in terror that even his regeneration has been sealed. Before collapsing completely, he mutters about a mysterious metal. Shia returns the sword to Locke and is shocked to sense a terrifying power from the blade, something she has never felt from any weapon before. Locke quickly laughs it off and claims that Shia is probably imagining things. He says the sword is just something he bought at a flea market. But in truth, this is the demon sword of the demon god king, a final boss-level weapon that he casually obtained after defeating its owner. From the pile of ashes, Shia picks up a cursed medal. She explains that this item has gathered curses from stolen blood and stolen lives over many centuries. Locke grows serious, because during his 10 years of fighting, he never saw any demon god use anything like it. Even though his body has crumbled, the Vampire Lord's remaining head continues speaking. He reveals that the medal's power will soon open a gate to the dimensional rift, where countless demon gods are waiting. After that, the dark gods will descend and drown the human world in disaster. Hearing the words dimensional rift, Locke immediately remembers the hell that trapped him for an entire decade. He also understands why Eric and Goran could not return to save him back then. The gate cannot be opened from the human world side. If the Vampire Lord's words are true, then some force is trying to break that rule. Locke cuts the medal in half to stop the plan, but the item immediately explodes and releases a torrent of black energy. Before Shia can react, Locke draws the demon sword. The blade begins to tremble and actively absorbs every trace of the curse. The immediate danger is resolved. At the same time, Locke realizes that the demon sword is not only a weapon for killing, it can also absorb cursed power, which may make it extremely useful in the battles ahead. Before disappearing completely, the Vampire Lord realizes in horror that the man standing before him is the legendary Great Sage Luck. He shouts Locke's true name. Locke calmly cuts down the remaining head and ends the fight. Shia immediately connects all the clues: the impossible strength, the demon sword, and the final confirmation from the Vampire Lord. She finally understands that the F-rank adventurer before her is actually the savior worshipped by the entire kingdom. Shia swears to protect his secret with her life. Locke only shrugs and tells her there is no need to be so serious. Besides, he says, he does not look anything like the overly handsome statue in the square. After returning to the royal capital, receptionist Aron repeatedly apologizes for the mistake in the quest evaluation. The original report mentioned only a small group of goblins, but in reality, there was a goblin lord and a vampire lord hiding inside. Without Locke and Shia, the young adventurers could easily have become food. Ario and Ginny still do not know Locke's true identity. They innocently believe that Shia defeated all the monsters, so they keep thanking her. The irony becomes even stronger when the two of them turn toward the stone statue of the great hero Luck, clasp their hands, and pray in gratitude to the savior for protecting them. Meanwhile, the real Luck is alive and standing less than 3 meters away. Locke can only smile awkwardly as people worship his statue like a guardian deity, while the real person quietly walks by with an F-rank card in his hand. At night, Locke asks Shia to continue gathering information about vampire movements. She happily agrees. Locke says that the peace he sacrificed 10 years to protect will not be destroyed so easily. Whether the force behind this is the demon gods or the dark gods, he will find a way to stop them. Shia gives Locke half of the cursed metal so he can take it back for investigation. After that, he goes to Goran's mansion to report. The moment the Grand Guildmaster sees his old friend, he explodes in anger because Locke said he would only be gone for a short while, yet disappeared for 3 whole days without sending a single message. Locke apologizes and shows him the half medal. He explains that the demon gods and the demon god king may have only been the advanced force of a greater power called the dark gods. Their goal is to open the dimensional rift from the human world side. Goran immediately sets aside his anger and focuses on the metal. He realizes that its material is extremely strange. It is not gold, or orichalcum, or mithril. Even with his many years of experience as Grand Guildmaster, he cannot identify its origin, so he decides to bring it to the alchemists for examination. Once official matters are done, Goran turns to a personal issue with the expression of a helpless father. He explains that his daughter, Chalice, is now 15 years old. The very child he once feared would not recognize him after he spent so long inside the rift. Chalice currently has strength around B rank, even though her official rank is still low. She inherited great power from her father, but lacks observation skills and caution. Goran worries that her impulsive personality will put her in danger, so he opposes her becoming an adventurer. As a result, father and daughter have fallen into a cold war. Chalice refuses to give up the path she has chosen, and the more Goran tries to stop her, the more she wants to prove herself. Outside, he manages thousands of adventures. At home, he is still just a father who does not know how to handle his teenage daughter. Goran asks Locke to secretly follow and protect Chalice. As soon as Locke hears this, he looks out the window and sees the girl standing in the yard. Chalice immediately glares at him, as if the strange man who suddenly appeared in her house has already become her enemy. A little later, while Locke is calmly eating, Chalice enters the room with the seriousness of someone preparing to investigate a mystery. She keeps looking at him, then at Goran, wanting to ask something but hesitating again and again. Locke has no idea that inside her head, she has already built an entire family drama. Finally, Chalice suddenly points straight at Locke and boldly announces the theory that freezes the entire dining table. "You are my father's illegitimate son, aren't you?" That question immediately drags Locke into a family misunderstanding he never asked for. Chalice looks at his young appearance, Goran's familiar attitude toward him, and the fact that he appeared so suddenly. Then she connects every detail into the conclusion that makes the most sense to her imagination. If Goran hears this, he will probably laugh and cry at the same time. The daughter he once feared might forget his face, not only recognizes him clearly, but has also somehow turned humanity's savior into her secret half-brother. And with that, a new family misunderstanding begins. Locke immediately denies being Goran's secret son, but to Chalice, his obvious discomfort is practically a confession. After surviving 10 years inside the spatial rift, he never imagined that his first serious challenge upon returning to civilization would be proving that he was not the illegitimate child of his closest friend. Chalice calmly raises 3 fingers and begins presenting her evidence like a detective who has already solved the case. First, Goran only brought Locke home while his wife was away. Second, Goran became noticeably happier after Locke arrived. Third, during the 3 days Locke spent away on a mission, Goran was so worried that he could not focus on reading and repeatedly cleaned the house just to calm himself down. According to Chalice, her father is terrible at hiding his emotions. The more he tries to behave normally, the more suspicious he becomes. Locke can only sit in silence. Every detail in her analysis is correct, yet the conclusion has somehow fallen into another dimension. He begins imagining Goran's entire household collapsing simply because he needed a place to stay. Meanwhile, the butler directs a heavy stare toward him, silently delivering a very clear message. "You caused this situation so you can solve it yourself." With no better option, Locke explains that he and Goran are longtime companions who spent years fighting together far from home. That is why Goran became anxious when he suddenly lost contact with him. Locke also emphasizes that his real age is far greater than his youthful appearance suggests, making it impossible for him to be Goran's son. Chalice becomes silent for several seconds, nodding as though she has finally understood everything. Then she delivers an even more devastating conclusion. If he is not her father's son, perhaps he is her older brother. Locke immediately denies it. Chalice adjusts the theory again and decides he must be her younger brother instead, even inviting him to start calling her Big Sister. At this point, she appears capable of creating an entire family tree from nothing. Desperate, Locke places a adventurer card on the table and points to the name written clearly across it, Locke Franzen. Goran's family name is Morton. He assumes this undeniable evidence will finally end the investigation. Chalice merely concludes that her father must not have officially acknowledged him yet. She reassures Locke that none of this is his fault and promises to force Goran to confess everything so that her mother can deal with him personally. Locke begins sweating. This misunderstanding is now only a few steps away from destroying a perfectly innocent marriage. The false identity card created to protect his secret has somehow become evidence against him. When every ordinary explanation fails, Locke finally asks whether Chalice can keep a secret important enough to shake the entire kingdom. After she agrees, he removes the disguise placed upon his adventurer card. The false information disappears, revealing the name Locke Franzen and a collection of overwhelming titles: Great Sage, Savior of Humanity, Grand Magician, and Grand Duke. Locke admits that he is the hero believed to have died inside the spatial rift and that he returned only a few days earlier. Chellis freezes when she realizes that the man sitting in front of her is the legendary figure whose statue stands in the royal capital. Even this truth cannot immediately stop her imagination. She remembers the statue in the city square and finally understands how far her investigation wandered from reality. The confident young detective instantly disappears. Chellis drops to her knees and apologizes desperately to the great hero Locke. Locke does not blame her. He simply asks her to keep his survival secret because once the truth becomes public, countless political and personal complications will follow. The interrogation helps Locke understand why Goran worries so much about his daughter. Chellis possesses strong convictions, but she often reaches a conclusion too early and then rearranges every piece of evidence to defend it. For an adventurer, that habit could cause her to misjudge an enemy and charge into danger before properly understanding the situation. At the same time, Locke can see the determination beneath her impulsive personality. Rather than forbid her from adventuring, he decides to accompany her on an E-rank mission. She is already registered with the guild, and if he refuses to help, she will probably search for trouble on her own. The safest solution is to let her begin her first adventure under the supervision of someone powerful enough to protect her. On the road toward a village near the forest, Chellis can barely contain her excitement. This is the first time she has left the city as an official adventurer, and the peaceful countryside makes the assignment feel more like a pleasant excursion than a real mission. Once they reach the village, however, the reports become increasingly strange. Different villagers claim to have seen monsters with completely different appearances. One person describes a creature with several heads, while another insists that an enormous beast wandered through the area. Despite these frightening stories, no one has been attacked. No houses have been damaged and not a single animal has disappeared. Chellis points out that if monsters as powerful as the villagers describe were truly roaming this close to the royal capital, the mission would never have been classified as E-rank. Locke agrees. The guild probably examined the lack of injuries and property damage and concluded that the reported creatures did not actually exist. Even so, the two follow the request and travel to the exact coordinates listed in the mission. At first, the land before them appears completely empty. Then the ground begins shaking violently. Dust rises in enormous circles and a gigantic red dragon suddenly appears directly in front of them. Its size and thunderous roar shake the surrounding forest. Chellis briefly trembles, but the fear is quickly replaced by excitement as her desire to fight takes over. While Chellis draws her sword and prepares to attack, Locke notices several important details. The dragon has no smell, produces no body heat, and carries none of the presence of a living creature. He immediately understands that it is an illusion. However, this is no ordinary spell designed only to deceive the eyes. The dragon is constructed from mana so densely compressed that it can produce sound, possess weight, and create genuine physical impact. Rather than destroying it immediately, Locke allows Chellis to fight in her own way. She charges forward, avoids a sweeping claw, and repeatedly strikes the creature's legs and body. Sparks fly from every impact, convincing her that she is attacking a living monster with extraordinarily durable scales. As Locke observes, he confirms that Chellis truly possesses the physical ability and swordsmanship of a B-rank adventurer. Goran's assessment of his daughter was not biased. Unfortunately, Chellis focuses entirely on the enemy in front of her. She fails to notice that her attacks only disturb the mass of mana and do nothing to harm the person controlling it. The dragon gradually pushes her into a disadvantageous position. Only then does Locke step forward. He places one hand against the enormous illusion, analyzes the flow of mana, and activates Drain. Every trace of magical energy is immediately absorbed. The gigantic dragon breaks apart into streams of light and disappears before Chellis's eyes. Chellis drops onto the ground and checks her body, only then realizing that she has not been injured. When Locke confirms that the dragon was an illusion, she angrily asks why he did not tell her sooner. Locke uses the battle to explain her most dangerous weakness. When facing an illusion capable of physical interaction, continuing to attack it directly only wastes stamina. The correct response is to locate the caster and disable them. If the enemy's position cannot be identified, retreating before the trap becomes more dangerous is the smartest choice. Chellis stubbornly argues that she dislikes the idea of running away. Locke answers coldly that staying alive is still better than dying because of pride. The reality behind those words leaves her with no effective response. After finishing the lesson, Locke turns toward the forest and calls out to the person hiding nearby. He realized from the beginning that whoever created the illusions never intended to hurt anyone. The false monsters were designed only to frighten strangers away. Lines of light surrounding the trees slowly fade, and a small girl wearing a purple cloak steps into view. Locke quietly praises her ability to conceal her presence, which was nearly perfect. The girl becomes nervous and introduces herself as Lucira, a member of the demon race. Chellis immediately leans toward Locke and whispers a question. Are demons not supposed to be cruel and evil? Locke gently corrects her. Demons often possess powerful magic and strong bodies, but strength has nothing to do with whether someone is good or wicked. Lucira asks why Locke would trust a demon who just used an illusion to block his path. He explains that she never injured the villagers and avoided using lethal attacks against either of them. Lucira also understands that her magic is completely ineffective against the man before her. Locke is strong enough to overpower her and force out the truth, yet he chooses to sit down and speak peacefully. That decision convinces her to trust him. Lucira agrees to show them what she has been protecting, leading the two deeper into the mountains toward an ancient temple constructed during the Age of the Gods. Inside the deepest chamber, Lucira happily announces that she's returned to Lord Gerberga. Locke and Chellis follow her gaze and discover a round white creature resting comfortably in a nest of straw. It looks exactly like an unusually large but otherwise completely ordinary chicken. Chellis blurts out the obvious question, is that not simply a chicken? Lucira immediately becomes defensive and insists that Gerberga is the divine being worshipped by her tribe for generations. She admits that he is technically still a chicken, but he is a chicken possessing sacred power. According to Lucira, Gerberga's ancestors once awakened the world with their crowing. That power established the boundary between day and night and also affected the barriers separating different worlds. Because of this, Gerberga can open and close gateways connected to other dimensions. Locke immediately focuses on the most important possibility. Could that power seal the spatial rift? Lucira confirms that it can. The answer is brief, but it completely changes the situation. If the gateway beyond the rift opens, countless demon gods may invade their world. Gerberga is the only living key capable of preventing that catastrophe. Locke finally understands why the vampires have been desperately hunting a creature that appears completely harmless. If Gerberga is eliminated, the greatest obstacle preventing the rift from opening will disappear. Lucira continues her story in a quiet voice. Her tribe once lived peacefully in the northern mountains. Then the vampires arrived without warning and slaughtered the entire village. Lucira was the only survivor. Before dying, the tribal chief entrusted Gerberga to her and ordered her to flee to this ancient temple, which was believed to contain a barrier capable of stopping vampires. Lucira carried Gerberga through the dark forest, bearing both the responsibility and the final hopes of her people. Even after reaching the temple, however, the pursuers continued to appear. Locke examines the surrounding structure and confirms a terrible truth. No protective barrier currently exists here. Either the chief's information was wrong or the protection vanished long ago. What matters is that Lucira can no longer rely on the temple for safety. Locke offers to take both her and Gerberga to the royal capital and protect them himself. For Lucira, however, entrusting the god her entire tribe died protecting to an adventurer she only just met is an impossibly serious decision. To give her a reason to believe him, Locke draws the demon sword once wielded by the demon god king and drives it into the stone floor. He calmly explains that there is only one reason such a weapon could be in his possession. He personally defeated its former master. Lucira stares in disbelief as she realizes that the man before her is not a low-ranked adventurer at all. He is the great sage Luck, the legendary savior honored throughout the world. Chellis quietly confirms that Luck survived the spatial rift and has finally returned. Luck kneels until he is at eye level with the frightened girl. Using his true name, he swears that he will protect the divine rooster Gerberga even at the cost of his own life. In Lucira's memories, the villagers never viewed protecting their god as an unwanted burden. It was the greatest pride of their people. Now the legendary hero himself is acknowledging that their sacrifice was not meaningless. Lucira clutches Gerberga tightly and begins to cry. Throughout her desperate escape, she could do nothing except continue obeying the final command given to her. Luck's promise finally gives her someone trustworthy enough to share the responsibility she is carried alone. By the time the group leaves the temple, evening is approaching. Chellis immediately begins discussing the possibility of keeping Gerberga at home as a pet, earning fierce protests from Lucira. Their argument has barely started when a group of vampires descends from the sky and blocks the path ahead. One of the vampires demands Locke's identity. He coldly replies that creatures as insignificant as them are not worthy of knowing his name. After confirming that their targets are Lucira and Gerberga, Locke wastes no more time. He casts a wide-area magic arrow rain, sending countless beams of light through the enemy formation. The surviving vampires are forced to transform in order to escape. Their bodies separate into swarms of bats, an extremely troublesome ability because even a small group of bats can survive and later reconstruct the original body. At the exact moment the vampires become trapped between their humanoid forms and their swarms of bats, Gerberga pokes his head out from beneath Lucira's cloak and lets out a powerful crow. Divine energy instantly establishes a forced boundary. The incomplete state between two different forms is no longer permitted to exist. Every bat freezes in the middle of transformation and turns to ash within seconds. Lucira explains that Gerberga's ability works only at the precise moment an enemy is changing states. He cannot destroy vampires whenever he chooses. However, because transforming into bats is their most common method of escape, this power makes the divine rooster one of their deadliest natural. When the group returns to the royal capital after nightfall, Shia is already waiting. She complains that Locke kept her waiting far too long, then immediately delivers urgent information. The recent enemies are no longer operating as isolated individuals. Vampire forces have begun gathering and preparing operations on a much larger scale. According to the intelligence she collected, the being standing above the other vampire lords is a great lord known as the King of Kings. Far away in the darkness, countless pairs of red eyes open beneath an ancient fortress. Above them stands the enormous silhouette of a figure with vast wings. Its identity and specific objective remain unknown, but the attack against Gerberga was clearly not an isolated event. Luck has finally discovered the key capable of sealing the spatial rift, and at the same time, the vampires have begun assembling beneath a leader more powerful than any enemy he has encountered since returning.